Good morning, good afternoon and good evening. It's been a hell of a long time, so let's get straight on with this. This is a 1983 Matchbox Ford Sierra XR4i Cosworth. So I've had a fair few months off then, not really doing a lot with the die-cast stuff. This one was actually done a couple of months back, and it was February, March time I think when I did my last video. So there's been lots of stuff going on, lots of plans for other model type dioramas and what have you that I've got going on. But I'll get the elephant out of the room again straight away. I've labelled this as a Sierra Cosworth. The eagle-eyed ones amongst you can see it's an XR4i or a Merca XR4i, which you had in the States. Got quite a lot of these knocking around. It is one of my favourite cars, and I've actually done a few little wheel swaps on these with some of the more modern day Hot Wheels type wheels that you get on the newer castings. So I thought I'd just have a bit of a play around whilst I was figuring out what I'm going to do with this. And funnily enough, what's actually happened with me taking so long to do this, Hot Wheels have actually announced that they're going to do a Ford Sierra Cosworth now, so which is music to my ears. But having got all the way down the road of doing what I'm going to do with this one, I thought, crikey, I should have really waited. But big Ford fan, love Escorts, love anything RS, to be honest with you. Actually had one of these and a Sierra Cosworth in real life many years ago, so they are a fond car of mine, and a lot of these cars I've got in my collection. I've got some Matchbox ones, and some on the right are from MC Toy. I don't quite know a lot of history about them. All I know is that there was a lot of moulds coming out of the Far East at the time, which bared a lot of the resemblance from Matchbox. So please, if any of you know a bit more than what I do, just please drop me a comment and I'll update this or put it on the Facebook or whatever to update anybody else who didn't know. But it is one of these types of castings that has got multiple layers on it, so it has been a bit of a pain to do this one, in all honesty. But as you can see, as I'm stripping it down, I've put a link in the description further along how to remove these. I've done that a number of times, and I've done a tutorial on that, so I won't bore you with it. But as you can see, it's got a separate lower body mold to this one. It's not all in one piece, which is a bit of a problem later on, which I'll show you. But traditionally, like a lot of the old Matchboxes, it's really easy to remove the wheels on these lovely little spring steel underneath. So making a wheel swap or anything basic on them is fairly straightforward to do. But going on to the rest of it, again, adding to all these multiple layers on this, it's got the headlights, which have stretched as part of the windscreen moulding assembly, and then that rear biplane spoiler. There's quite a lot of parts in this, and it's only got the one locating nipple, lug, whatever I've called them in the past, at the front, and then it sort of slips and locates on the rear where the number plate is. So it's a bit of an oddball one, to be perfectly honest. But as I'm just showing you now, you can see where the headlight's broken, probably as I've been taking it apart, to be honest. It's a little bit brittle. And then this rear spoiler, easy enough to get out, but quite battered and bruised where it's been sat in the toy box for the last 30 odd years. All in all, not a bad car. One of the better ones that I've got. I've got quite a few different liveries. Funnily enough, they did do a lot of the Sierra Cosworth racing liveries, which is a little bit odd why they never did the actual Sierra Cosworth back then, because they did the Escort. So yeah, God only knows, I don't quite know. But now I've stripped the paint off it. Again, I'll put another link in the description how I do it, so as not to bog this video down with repetitive parts from other projects that I've done over the years. You can see the body's pretty good, actually. It's fairly smooth. It's going to need quite a bit of work to get it to look the same as the Sierra Cosworth. On the face of things, you know, there was a lot of replicas knocking around, which people based off these XR4Is back in the day. just by ripping out the rear window and changing that sort of nose front end bit, but there is quite a lot of differences when you start to analyze this. And I'm going to start off by doing some of the cutouts from where it would be on that nose part. Obviously the bonnet vents, which was a main feature of it, some parts to the front bumper, and start off by cutting out this rear window, which a lot of people did and just simply plonked on the big whale tail spoiler and thought they were Cosworth back then. But for those of you that don't know, the XR4i was a 2.8 V6. As I say, I had one funny story about that. I'll try and get into that later on. Sierra Cosworths were 2 litre 16 valve 4-pot turbos. In America, the 2.3 turbo, I think they were. They were called Mercers. And funnily enough, Andy Rouse won the British touring car in America, XR4i, which then sort of paved the way for the Sierra Cosworth development over here in England back in the day. And just quickly, as you saw then, use the jeweler saw. I'll put all the links to that in the description, just to cut out this rear 3/4 pillar of where the window was. Quite, at the time, it was quite a unique feature. Quite good. But as their overall body shell of the real cars, that was sort of only the real main difference to the main pressing of the shell, I suppose. But all the other bits were the bolt-on parts of it. So just quickly going on to mark out some other parts I want to cut out. These bonnet vents, which again spawned many lookalikes and all sorts of stick-on things on all sorts of cars over the years, some good, some bad. And I'm just using a small little pin vise, pin drill even, just to start the hole off so I can put this jeweler's saw back in again. And I'll start hacking away at these little parts, and I'll fine tune it with a file as well as I go on, but just sort of showing you the processes of how I go about opening up these apertures around the car. I actually had, as I say, both of the cars. I had three. I had the Sapphire Cosworth and the RS Cosworth, not the 500, just the 3-door. I say just the 3-door, they're worth a right bomb or two now. I wish I'd have kept them, but obviously life goes on, families go on. But I actually had an XR4i after I had the Cosworths, the other way around, quite bizarrely. But I'm just showing you here quickly how I'm filing through. But this XR4i, I bought it for 125 quid. And this was late 90s, I guess it was. So it wasn't exactly a brilliant car, but as you can imagine, for 125 quid. I'm just talking over this, but I'll quickly keep going back into it. I'm just opening up the front end now, where on a Sierra Cosworth they had a bigger grille instead of the whole plastic front nose, but I'm doing the same sort of process as what I've done on the bonnet vents. But this car, it was 125 quid. Bought it off a guy from work. Yeah, God, it drove like an absolute bag of nails. When you braked, it faced the tarmac. When you accelerated, it hit the sky. It was like trying to put a marble on a piece of paper and trying to balance it in the centre. You know, it was an absolute pile of dog turd. It really was. 13-inch steel wheels. Was it 13 or 14? 13 or 14 inch, can't quite remember now. Pepper pot wheels. I think they were 165 tyres, and it really was a dog. But I have to say, out of all the cars I've ever had over the years, it scared the life out of me even more than the Cosy. And I think it's purely because it handled like a bag of nails. It was like an on-off switch. You either accelerated and the back end came round, or you braked and it skidded in a straight line. It was an absolute terror machine. In the end, I scrapped it though. And that was the end of that. So that was a little bit of a brief history on the 4i. But going back to this 4i, I'm making this bottom half, trying to make it a little bit more flusher, because on, again, the 4i, it had a plastic moulded trim on the car along the side, sort of lower quarter of the car. on the doors, and it matched the front and rear bumpers, whereas the Cosworth didn't. It was the actual metal panels of the car. So I think this is what Matchbox have done. They've just followed it through along that theme, hence all these parts on it. So I'm trying to smooth it out. I know I'm not going to get it perfect because I've still got to put it together, and I can't really put any putty or anything along that line now between the two because I've still got to shut it and close it all together. So it's a bit of a compromise, but as you can see, that's how it should, well, how it was looked, or did look as an XR4i, and this is how I'm trying to do, by smoothing it down and then just using a knife and actually a dental well, it's not a scribe, it's acting like a scribe, but this is a sort of a dental toolkit, which dentists use. I found it on Amazon. Got all these little pieces, and they're brilliant. So I'm just using that just to scribe the lines in to give the body panels the shut lines back again. And it's a little bit, I tried this on a couple of different cars, loads of different methods to try and see if I should actually put more putty on it and make the wheel arch body kits a little bit bigger, but I think overall it's worked a little bit better by just keeping it a bit more simpler along these lines. So moving on to the front bumper, it's quite a bit of difference again between the 4i and the Cosworth. It's got a lot more, it's a lot more meatier on the front, one for a better word. It's got more air dams to get more airflow into the coolers, into the intercoolers and whatever. But again, there's major differences between the 3-door standard Sierra Cosworth and the RS500s on the front, on the bumpers, where the indicators were. They had spotlights on the 3-door. On the Cosworth, they were removed. I think, if my memory serves me right, they were still putting a nice Ford parts box and putting the boot, so if you wanted to retrofit them, you could do. But where you pulled them out, or where they were out on the 500, they were actually air apertures to get more flow into the engine and towards the intercooler and all that area again anyway. So as you can see, this is the fiddly bit I'm on about now, trying to get it to hook in through the back, the chassis of it, sort of underneath this body lower moulded piece, and then into where the number plate is on the actual casting of the body. So it's a hell of a job trying to get it to fit together, but just comparing the two, we're just starting to see the changes and what I've got to do, because again, I've got to get this to shut down, so whatever I put on this bumper at the front, I still need that clearance on this chassis to sort of clip in place, if you like. So quite a bit of fettling around now to get this to look anything decent. And I'm going to use my beloved styrene as always. Start off quite crude and just build it up. There's no point in trying to reinvent the wheel with this because it's got nice little slits on this bumper. So rather than try and cut anything out afterwards, I'm going to layer it up and miss out parts where the slits were to hopefully give it them little intake bits. And it's, again, it's very basic, just building on top of it like this. Nothing overly complicated. Again, anybody can do it with the right tools. And I think it's like 0.5 or maybe a millimeter thick styrene I've used for this one. And all I'm simply doing is giving it the backbone before I put any of the putty onto it, really. So now I've glued it in place, you can sort of still see, well, not sort of, you can still see all the layers in that. So is at this point in a short while I need to put some putty on it. I think whilst I'm at it as well, I'm going to fill in the sunroof and clean up some of these edges off the casting as well. There's still little sharp bits from the mould, some of the flash off it. So I'll just give that a bit of a tickle and get it down. Again, as always, I'm doing a race car, so And that's the reason why I'm going to fill in the sunroof aperture. You know, race cars don't have sunroofs, so there's still there's a few little imperfections here and there on this, but you know, nothing really alarming, I guess. It's amazing the amount of well, how much the paint, when they put on them, hides some of all these imperfections underneath and what have you. So I assume they dip them. I don't know if they spray them when they're making these in mass production. I don't quite know how they do it. I'm sure if I look here on YouTube, I'll probably find out how it's made of how they do it, but I'm not too sure actually. So quickly going back to this moulding again, now it's a chance to go off a little bit. I'll use 2-part Milliput, just the standard Milliput stuff, which is great. Once it's dried, you can tap it, sand it, drill it, and all you need to do is just get 2 equal parts of the hardener and the resin stuff. Well, it's not resin, it's well, I suppose it is. Just literally mush it together, and I tend to have a little pot of water next to it because it does start to get tacky and dry very, very quickly, and before you know it, you know, you're sticking to everything. So every now and again when it starts to tack up a little bit, I'll just dip my fingers in, just wet it a little bit, and it just makes it a little bit more slippery just to get on there. And again, it's not going to look pretty. I don't want it to look pretty at this stage. I'd rather go overboard and give it a bit too much so I can sand it away, cut it away, drill it off afterwards. So as long as I can get the bulk on there, I'm not too bothered at this stage how pretty it looks, as I say. Again, easy stuff to work with. I tend to leave it 24 hours. I don't know the exact drying time. It may be a lot quicker than that. I'm not unsure. I'm unsure. So I tend to leave it a lot longer. That way you'd know it's pretty good. I have come to do it in the past, and you start to sand and shave it away and what have you, and it's still like chewing gum on the inside. It's still quite tacky, and then you've wasted all your time again. You have to redo it and wait a bit longer. So I always leave it overnight and what have you. So just filling in the rear sort of wind screen aperture from where this biplane spoiler used to sit from the 4i. The RS had a lower, well, the RS500 had a lower rear spoiler and the big upper whale tail, whereas the RS Cosworth on its own had just the lower one. So, well, sorry, the upper one. So whilst I'm leaving it to dry, I just thought I'd quickly remind everybody of some of the merch that I've done. I haven't done any new designs for a long time, so I've had a think over these last couple of months and done some. So I've put all sorts on there now: long sleeves, hoodies, t-shirts. Might be something that you like, might be something that you don't. Again, I use a third party for this, but I just upload my designs. So if you're interested, it would be good to see people out and about. And if I see you out and about wearing one, I'll give you your money back. How's that? But take a look, you might like it. So now I've left it to dry over 24 hours. It's the we're over the hump of it all now. It's the cleaning up of everything. It's the sanding down, the shaving away, and just the general shaping of the parts to make them look pretty good. As you can see, I've put this lower spoiler on this, the RS500 on the back, which I'll get round to shaping, and I'm just doing the front end now, adding some of the apertures and some of the intakes, which will all look a lot better when it's painted up, I assure you. And I keep checking as I go along just to make sure it sits right, looks okay. And again, we're starting to make it look aggressive like the Cosworth is. And there's that rear spoiler I've done. It's starting to take shape a little bit. Just needs a bit more fettling. And it's starting to look pretty good. I'll work on this rear spoiler now, the classic part, which up until then no one ever seen anything like it. People nicknamed them all sorts of things. There was the whale tail, there was the picnic table, you name it. It actually spawned quite. It's had quite a funny ride, really, hasn't it? Over the years, the Sierra Cosworth. It was one of the fastest production cars at the time. It's certainly one of the fastest production Ford ever did at the time. Became an instant success overnight. It was nicked in droves overnight, so they were forever getting stolen, and I was very lucky with both of mine, I'll be honest, but it's not for the want of not leaving it anywhere and, you know, having one eye open all night. Sometimes you always used to think, is it ever going to be there in the morning? But great fun though, nevertheless. You can tune them up to good 500 or 600 horsepower, probably more than that nowadays, I don't know, but mine wasn't running much, just a stage one, but enough to have quite a bit of fun. And funnily enough, the Sideways King name comes from none of these Sierras. It comes from a Sierra, but none of them. It comes from, I think I've told this story in the past, my mother's 1.6 Sierra, because I acted like an absolute hoonigan in it. But that's where the name comes from. It's just reminded me. But you can see where I'm going now with this spoiler. It just needs a little bit of glue on the lower bit, and then married to the top bit, a bit of primer on it, and we're starting to get a pretty good looking Cosworth replica. It's just a shame it's in these two pieces. As I say, I could, you know, try and blend it all together, but then trying to get it all to fix underneath again, I try to keep things as, I say real, try to keep things as that reflect how they were originally manufactured, should I say. So I didn't really want to start manufacturing a new chassis and everything for it. I'll try and keep it as original as I can, even though it's been butchered quite a bit, so you know what I mean. But I'm looking forward to when the Hot Wheels release one anyway, so I'll have plenty of liveries lined up for that. It'll be a full BTCC grid and European touring car grids. It'll be amazing. Really looking forward to it. I'm going to keep the original seat in this, even though it's not a bucket seat, because again, even though the 164th, I say that they're not all 164th. We call them 164th, but they are quite different on some cars. Some are 156, some are a little one. They're all over the place, aren't they? So, unfortunately, the little resin bucket seats that are normally put in from edition 6 won't fit in. So I'm going to just chop away at the passenger seat. And again, the eagle-eyed ones amongst you will notice that this is a left-hand drive car, and actually the livery of the car I've finished with was actually a right-hand drive car, but I'll point that out before everybody else points it out. But I'm interested to wonder what the Hot Wheels one will be. That'll be interesting. I don't quite know, but I kept the interior as basic as I can. I've had a rethink now on these vents. It's such a fine aperture and hole underneath. I just don't think I'm going to get it to work. So, because it needs a bit of an some of the fins on top of the vent and a surround to it, the best sort of one I can come up with is exactly what I've just said at the start. It spawned a load of stick-on vents. I'm going to have to do some stick-on vents now to get it to look anything decent. It measures 5mm, and trying to get them levels of vents on the top of 5mm is, well, it's beyond my skills. I don't mind admitting that. So I'm going to try and do a compromise as best I can. So I've just taken some very fine wire pieces of styrene and stuck them onto the top of the other bits. So for these ones, I'm going to use some wheels from Turbo Sheep 164. Again, I'll put his Link in the description. Great guy, Nathan from Ireland. And these come in 2 pieces. And they really will set this car off, because the wheels that come with it, they've got 2, you can just about make out there's 2 different lips in there. So you can put on one of the wheels at the front, the spokes will stick out, and on the rear they'll dish in a little bit. So it really does finish it off superb. You can just about make that lip out there. And it's straightforward to put in, even though it's not on camera, which is clever of me. Oh, there we go. Just push them in a little bit. You could drop a little bit of glue in just beforehand, which would help out. So let's just, now the bulk of it is over, remind us what it started off as. This wonderful casting to my version of the RS500. And I've got to be honest, when I heard Hot Wheels have released one, I did sort of get a little bit despondent with it all, thinking, well, why am I going to all this much trouble? I can just go mental on the other one when it comes out. But nevertheless, I carried on, and there's that many different liveries that I loved. You know, it's not just a car I enjoyed owning, it's my favourite all-time, well, I'd go as far as to say not my favourite all-time race car, my favourite all-time car. If I had the money now, I'd be honest with you, I don't think I'd be buying one, because, you know, I still think they're astronomical prices. But I've had one and they were loads of fun. And for this one, I decided to do probably one of the best races in the business at that time, and certainly prepared cars. Dick Johnson from Australia. I mean, if you don't know, well, you've been living under a rock if you're into these cars and you don't know who he is, but just put in Bathurst, you know, the races, or Sierra Cosworth Bathurst, and just watch them, and it's just amazing. Really, really good. I could have gone a load of different ways. I could have gone Andy Rouse, I could have gone Tim Harvey, 2 of my all-time favourite drivers. But now I decided for this one I'll do it as the Shell Ultra High, and then I'll revisit the other ones when the other ones come out. So hope you liked this. I've waffled quite a bit on this because I haven't done a video for so long. I'll try and keep a little bit more pressure on myself and do some more. But other than that, I hope you dig it. Please follow me. Please subscribe to me. I'd really appreciate it. All the very best.